everybody, Jason here from Murideo. Good morning on this fine Monday morning. A little rainy here in St. Petersburg, Florida today, and the humidity came back, which is not terribly expected. Today, I have a very special guest from HDBaseT, and that is Daniel Shwartzberg. How's it going, Danny?
Good morning, Jason. It's always a pleasure to see you and to talk to you. And I'm doing fine, thanks. How are you?
I'm fantastic. And one of the reasons we wanted to get together and talk today is, unfortunately, my heart is broken that you're not going to be able to make it to Infocomm in Orlando.
If your heart is broken, you can only imagine how broken my heart is. Double with a cherry on top. Yeah, unfortunately, I was scheduled to be there, and then
Yeah.
it all fell apart at the last moment due to some personal reasons. So,
No, that's
yeah,
okay.
there's so much. I mean, first of all, I think it's going to be amazing. People are desperate to start talking face to face rather
Yes,
than face to camera to internet to screen to face.
exactly.
Um, and I think it's going to be, a great opportunity for people to get together after what 2 years basically since the
Yeah,
last big AV show.
yes, sir. Well, I wanted to get together with you today to sort of talk about what we're going to be seeing at Infocomm. I'll personally be at the HDBaseT booth doing some demos on the MSTest Pro, which we'll talk about here today.
Yes, sir.
That's had a recent firmware update. They've changed the interface completely. They've added some new features. So great piece of test equipment we'll talk about today. We also want to dabble in HDBaseT 3.0 a little bit just to show the folks what's coming with that format, that product. And then we'll talk about something I'm really excited about. You guys have developed very recently, I feel like, is the HDBaseT Master Program,
Oh
which
yeah.
is
Yeah.
free to take, is it not?
As many times as you want.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Free of charge, no spam, nothing like that. So yeah, we'll be talking about that because that is, yeah, we rolled that out a few months ago, and the feedback has been astonishing. So if you haven't already taken it, Jason, I know you were talking to me about taking it. You got to do it, man. You got
Oh,
to do
for
it.
sure. I'm registered now, and I know one of my associates, Cody, up in Green Bay, Wisconsin. He's taken it. He said it was awesome. I did the train the trainer program with you back in San Francisco. Gosh, it's probably been 3 or 4 years
Ah,
when
it
we
was a
first
long time
met.
ago. Yeah, I had
Yeah.
hair back then. I had hair on my head back then.
So that's cool. All right, so let's go ahead and share your screen. You said you got some cool slides to show with everybody, yeah?
I said I had some slides to show everybody. If they're cool or not, I will have to let everybody decide. But let me just do this. And do you see that okay, man? Do you see that looking good,
Yes, sir.
Jason?
We sure do. And for those of you who are watching live, before we get too deep into the presentation, just remember there is a question box. I'll be watching the question box as we go along here. Any questions that you guys might have, go ahead and type them into the question box. No big deal. And anybody who didn't get a chance to ask their questions, we'll provide our email addresses here at the end in case you do have any specific questions. We're happy to get those answered for you. So, Danny, so I see your slides now. You sound good. You look good. Let's get
Oh,
moving.
you sound like my mother. Thank you so much. Well, again, Jason, I really do appreciate you taking the time to host us today and to host me in
Thank
particular.
you.
Always a pleasure talking to you. And yeah, we got a bunch of slides to share with you. Just in case there is somebody on the call who's unaware of what HDBaseT is, well, we're going to take you through the technology, and then we're going to focus on Spec 3 because, as you said, this is what's hot, and this
Yes.
really is what's revolutionizing the industry and bringing capabilities that until this point in time simply have not been possible, not only from HDBaseT but from any other video
Hmm.
distribution technology. So this really is a game changer. Then we're going to dig deeper into what you folks, but not me, what you folks are going to be seeing at Infocomm the day after tomorrow when the show floor opens, and then we'll talk more about that all new online training program.
The uh,
So
the, the
yeah, go ahead.
HDBaseT. I'm sorry. I just want to say real quick because I feel deeply about this. I feel like with HDBaseT 3.0, and I know we'll get into it. I don't know what you guys did, but it's magic. It's it's very cool, and I feel like I think you just nailed it. Um, we're able to do stuff that we didn't think was possible before. So this is really, really exciting stuff.
And we'll show a little bit of the when we get to inside the technology, just a little bit of information about what happens under the hood,
Hmm.
because it's not apparently obvious to many people how on earth do we do this stuff.
Hmm.
And until I really got into the details, I thought it was black magic, but it's really not. There's some fantastically cool technology within this
Very.
this specification that makes it all possible. But let's take it step by step, and just first of all, a few words about who we are, who I represent today. So I'm here, of course, with HDBaseT Alliance, and we have a very clear mission statement. It's all about taking a wonderful technology that we have called HDBaseT, standardizing it and promoting it to the world, to the market, really in order to be, and we are, the global standard for uncompressed distribution of ultra high definition content. Okay, so we're talking about getting a lot of bandwidth, a lot of video in particular across without the need for any compression. And of course, today we focus on professional audio video market, but we are well beyond that. You can find not the same chipsets that we use for this space, but chipsets that have the same technology in it, currently on the road in the brand new Mercedes-Benz S-Class.
Yes.
You will find us in medical applications, in industrial applications, in areas which are not typically where HDBaseT started, but certainly that just illustrate the flexibility and the robustness of this solution and this technology to a really wide base of different applications and different use cases. So we're about standardizing the technology. We're also about making sure that when we have a standard, that customers, our customers who are rolling out products, we must make sure that those products meet the requirements of the specification. So we have a compliance testing program, and that's fantastic because it means that we can now have an interoperable, got to put my teeth in this morning, interoperable technology. We have an ecosystem that allows you to take products from different vendors and to plug them together. It's truly plug and play, and to know that they will work. And I'm going to say it here, and I'm going to say it probably another 100 times before we finish today, to anybody who is designing systems, to anybody who is buying product with HDBaseT inside, only buy products from the compliant list, the list of compliance products that appears on the hdbaseth.org website. You can search there for any type of product that you're looking for. Make sure that the products you buy have been tested, have got the stamp that they are compliant to the spec, because that way you can guarantee interop between all of the many different vendors selling a wide range of different products on the market.
Very nice. Good point too, to make sure that they're compliant, because there's a lot of stuff out there I've seen on websites where you can buy things in bulk and websites where you can buy things from overseas that have a category cable connection on it, but they are not HDBaseT certified. So whether they work or not, who knows? Who knows?
So our mission is to make sure that these things do work. So buy a compliant product there. That's the second plug that I've given to only buying compliant product. That's the third one right there. We're also, of course, about marketing this technology. So not only as an alliance, but we help our members also to market their products. And of course, market education is so important. That's my role in particular, getting the message out there, running training courses to installers, to integrators. We do the course that you mentioned earlier, the Train the Trainer course, our authorized trainer program, to allow others to go out and train their own installers and their own users of their products in working with the technology. Super important. There's a lot of misinformation in the market and in the industry, and we want to make sure that our message is heard correctly and that people really understand what HDBaseT is all about and the many, many benefits that it does bring with it. So, of course, we are an alliance, and this is not a quiz. I'm not going to suddenly add another logo, and you're going to have to check, which one's been added or taken away. But we were established in 2010 and have grown very quickly to the point that today we have more than 200 members distributed all around the world. You can see their logos here, and this is updated all the time because all the time we're getting new members joining us.
Sure.
We have founders, we have contributors, those guys are the ones who are helping to define the spec, and then we have a whole range of adopters who are actually using the technology. And pretty much everybody that you see on this slide are creating and selling HDBaseT products. And the good news is that this list grows pretty much on a weekly basis. We have to add to this every month. And that means that there's more products out there for people to select. And that's just great for the ecosystem of installers and integrators, system designers, who now have a wide range of products to choose from. Alrighty, so why HDBaseT? And if we step back in time, I mean, we look at the problem facing a typical installer or system designer, a whole bunch of interfaces that needed to be extended in the system, and you can see some of them here. And Jason, you know this better than I do. And now, not only were these all done on an independent, different, unique cable each one, But many of those cannot be field terminated, so you had to buy the longest possible cable you could, and you probably had some spare, or it was not long enough. So they couldn't be field terminated, and they were limited in distance. So, for example, HDMI cable, if you have a passive cable, 10 meters, what's that? 30 feet, maybe 40 feet at a press you can achieve, but you need to pay top dollar to do that.
Yes.
If you want to do, for example, USB 2.0 extension, you're limited to 5 meters by the USB 2 spec. And it doesn't matter, therefore, that your HDMI can go longer than 5 meters, because you need to get HDMI and USB between your source and your sink. Now you're limited by the shortest of those cables. So you had a bunch of cables. It became an absolute nightmare to install them, and you were really limited by distance. And this was a true pain point. The guys at Valence who invented this technology, Valence, in case you're unaware, are the chipset vendors, and the inventors of the technology came along and said, there's got to be a better way to do that. And they've taken all of those cables and basically replaced them by one long distance cable to provide really the ultimate standard for digital connectivity over that single cable. Now, you may think, well, Daniel, just a minute, you're replacing all of those others with this cable. You're probably thinking that's got to be a really complicated cable, a super expensive cable, but it could not be further from the truth. This is a standard category cable, a standard LAN cable that we're all familiar with. It can run up to 328 feet, 100 meters long. In some cases, it can go even beyond that. You can terminate it in the field, so you can cut it to the exact length that you want. And so really you can go over and above what any of those other cables could be done before. So longer cables, less cables, and it really did very quickly become the standard that was adopted in the industry for long reach extension of AV technology. Now, what we do on that single cable is what we call 5-play convergence. So we have these 5 different elements, and we pass them all over the same cable. So we're talking about uncompressed 4K video, as well as the audio that accompanies it. We're talking about Ethernet, and depending upon which version of the specification, it influences how much Ethernet we can pass and how much uncompressed video we can pass, and we'll talk more about that in a few moments. We can also provide up to 100 watts of DC power on that cable, so you don't necessarily even need a power outlet at one end of your link, okay? We can provide the necessary controls, things like infrared, like UART, very popular. RS-232 control is very popular in the industry. And we can provide USB 2.0 as well, all of that on a single cable, okay? Really an enormously powerful value proposition that was brought to the market way back then. That has been standardized by the HDBaseT Alliance and adopted by so many members with thousands of different products out there. So if we now dive a little bit deeper, and this is where I'll get a little bit technical, how do we do that? Because you did say at the beginning, it is kind of amazing what we can do on this one cable, because this cable was never defined for the sort of bandwidth and was never intended to be used for the sort of bandwidth.
No way.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a cable that can, in most instances, be as simple as an unshielded Cat5e cable. And we are doing so much more on that cable than was ever intended. So how do we do that? We use a signaling scheme called PAM, Pulse Amplitude Modulation, not invented by HDBaseT Alliance. You can find this in other technologies as well. But certainly we leverage it to our benefit. And what does PAM actually do? It encodes the data in the actual signal level that runs on the cable. So in other words, we have a series of signal pulses, and the amplitude of each one of those pulses encodes the data itself. And we have some examples here of what PAM looks like. And you know, maybe what I'll do, I should have done this earlier, I always forget, we'll switch to laser pointer. So we have, for example, PAM2. The 2 means that it has 2 levels. Right. It's either a 0 or 1, and that means that each level represents a single bit of data. We can see PAM4, and here we can see the I pattern, 4 discrete levels, meaning that each one of those levels can represent 2 bits of data. And you get the idea here. Now, with HDBaseT, we take it to a completely different level, or I should say we take it to 16 completely different levels. So we operate using PAM16. Not surprisingly, the 16 refers to the number of discrete levels that can be in the signal. And basically what we then do is we code 4 bits of data for each and every one of those levels. Okay, that means that I transmit a particular level. It represents 4 bits of data. And all I need to do at the far end of the link is to recover the level to, okay, sample that particular level, maybe this one here. As long as I sample the upper level, I know that I'm representing 4 bits and all of them are 0. Sounds easy. There is a problem.
Easy.
Sounds easy. There you go. If it was easy, we'd all be doing it.
We'd all do it. Yeah.
We're not all doing it. And why are we not all doing it? Because that cable that I was showing earlier, simple category cable, simple, cheap LAN cable, destroys the I pattern along the way.
Sure.
So what we have on the left is the I pattern on the transmit side. After the channel, and when I'm talking about the channel, I mean the cable, and I mean the connectors and the patch panel and blah, blah, blah. Everything between the source and the sink that the signal runs across is known as the channel, and what happens is it destroys the signal. So whereas on the transmit side we have this lovely open I pattern, it's very easy to recognize the signal level and therefore the data bits. On the far side, it's a catastrophe. And the magic that happens within HDBaseT, and it's all done because we have a very advanced physical layer interface, which is DSP managed. And what that enables us to do on the far side of the link is to take this catastrophe and reopen the I diagram so it looks something like this. And once the I pattern has been reopened, I can sample the data correctly and I can recover the data correctly. Okay. So we do all of this within the silicon. And actually, before the silicon was available, nobody believed it was possible, but clearly it works. And that's thanks to the boffins at Valence and all of the folk who helped to standardize this, from the partners within the alliance who helped to standardize this technology, that made this a reality, something that really could happen. Okay. So yeah, there's a lot of technology that goes into the spec, and that of course is then implemented into the chipsets. And that's what makes it possible to carry many, many more gigabits of data than the cable was intended to be done. Now we have 3 versions of the spec, and before we dive into spec 3, which is, as I say, really incredible, let's talk about the earlier versions of the spec. Spec 1.0, and there's a few terminology matters just to clear up to begin with. We talk about here an asymmetric full duplex link. Now, what do I mean by asymmetric? A full duplex, we know full duplex means that we transmit data in both directions at the same time, but asymmetric means that we have more data going in one direction than we do in the other. So where do we have more of the data? Because we need most of the bandwidth for the video. So we have a lot of bandwidth going from the source, the video source, to the video sink. And in fact, for spec 1.0, that's 8 gigabits per second running from source to sink. And in the return direction, we have an auxiliary return channel that operates at 150 megabits per second, and that's for anything that is not video. So that's also, for example, for the Ethernet, the 100 meg of Ethernet, that's for the IR data that's carried across, and the UART data, and whatever. 8 gigabits per second, 150 meg in the return direction. The cable can be up to 100 meters, that's 328 feet in old money. It can be in 3 segments, so we can have a 90-meter infrastructure cable in the middle, and then 2 5 meters of patch cable at either end. 5 plus 90 plus 5, that's your 100 meters or 328 feet. This can be Cat5 UTP, so unshielded twisted pair. Really an extremely powerful technology, and all because we're able to operate at this higher level of PAM, this PAM16 encoding. That means we can work on this simple cable. In case you hadn't noticed, I've just switched to HDBaseT spec 2.0. Still asymmetric, still full duplex. What's the difference? We still have 8 gigabits per second from source to sink. In the return direction, we've beefed things up from 150 megabits per second to 300 megabits per second. And what that gives us is additional bandwidth that was needed, because for spec 2 we added additional interfaces to tunnel across the link. So suddenly we introduced the tunneling of USB 2.0. We introduced additional audio sideband channels, SPDIF, and we introduced I2S audio channels in addition to the audio that comes with the HDMI. So we needed more bandwidth for all of that. We added that in spec 2. We also added improved error correction. So we now have retransmission. So if a packet should be received with an error, we can retransmit it. Now, this happens at the physical layer. Unlike, for example, Ethernet, with Ethernet, transmission occurs very much up in the protocol stack, high up, and therefore introduces latency. This doesn't. This happens at the physical layer, so it's very fast and it doesn't break the latency. We can retransmit, error correct. It gives us some extra meters when we're talking about very high bandwidth video resolutions like 4K. So that's where the retransmission came in. Talking of latency, what I didn't say, and I should say it's true for all of the versions of the spec, ultra low latency protocol. We're talking about latency of less than 10 microseconds. So that is basically a zero latency solution. And if we think about now, we've added USB, and we're now talking about, for example, KVM switches and things like that. There's no delay in terms of the USB. There's no delay in terms of the video. If we're talking about gaming applications, ultra low latency, of course, super important. So the fact that we are sub 10 microseconds means that we are super suited to all of those applications where latency is simply a killer. I'm also going to tell you with Spec 2.0, we even introduced support for fiber optics. So in other words, you can find Spec 2 products that you run using standard 10G Ethernet SFP plus modules. So if 100 meters, 328 feet isn't enough for you, you can go hundreds of meters or kilometers, depending upon the type of transceiver, fiber optic transceiver, and the type of fiber cable that you use. Spec 1, Spec 2, 8 gigabits per second. What does 8 gigabits per second give us? That gives us uncompressed 4K 30 444, uncompressed 4K 60 420, in addition to 100 megabits per second of Ethernet, in addition with Spec 2 to USB 2.0, and all of the other goodies I was telling you about, I2C, UART, IR, as well as 100 watts of DC power over the cable. So a lot we get crammed into this simple cable running at 8 gigabits per second. But this is really what we need to talk about today, Spec 3.0, because this truly is a game changer. What we have done here is actually the recommended cable is Cat6a UFTP. What we have achieved is the unthinkable. We are talking about 16 gigabits per second from source to sink and 2 gigabits per second in the return channel, okay? A huge amount of bandwidth. Now, just to give you an indication of what that is the equivalent of 18 gigabits per second of HDMI 2.0, okay? If you think of all of the 18 gigabit per second formats that HDMI 2.0 supports, we managed to do that in actually less than 16 gigabits per second, because we are a super efficient protocol. No compression involved. We do not lose any of that HDMI data. We just transmit it in a more effective way than HDMI does themselves over an HDMI cable. You will appreciate HDMI has a 20% overhead using their 8B, 10B encoding scheme. You will appreciate that HDMI only uses 3 channels for the data and a separate clock channel. What we are doing on this simple category cable is actually using all 4 pairs. We don't have that 20% overhead that HDMI do, but we use all 4 pairs, and we are simultaneously sending data full duplex across all 4 pairs at the same time. And that is true, by the way, irrespective of whether it's Spec 1, 2, or 3, all 4 pairs used at the same time, full duplex. And we're using this PAM16, which is a very good way of reducing the signal losses in the cable while maintaining very, very high bandwidths. So like I've said, the equivalent of 18 gigabits of HDMI from source to sink, we are doing in 16 gigabits per second on the main link, and 2 gig on the return channel. Now, why did we increase to 2 gigabits per second? Because we upgraded the Ethernet support. So whereas Spec 1 and Spec 2 support support 100 gigabits per second, this now supports with Spec 3 1 gig. So gigabit Ethernet in addition to all of the HDMI 2.0 formats. So it's not that there's a trade-off here. We have enough bandwidth for everyone. In addition to that, we have enough bandwidth also to beef up the USB 2.0 bandwidth. So we now can support a 350 megabit per second data rate for the USB 2,
nice.
which is roughly more than double what Spec 2 could provide. So better Ethernet, more USB, additional audio sideband channels. This really is a game changer. Like I've said, the only solution on the market that is capable of long reach extension of uncompressed HDMI 2.0. And I said a few slides ago, there's a lot of misinformation in the industry. You will hear others claiming that they do HDMI 2.0 without compression. It's simply not true. This is the only long-reach technology capable of doing uncompressed HDMI 2.0. They will tell you they don't use compression. If you push them, they will tell you, oh, we only use a little bit of compression.
Yeah.
But you decompress it. And where does compression bring in problems? Because compression introduces interoperability issues, because different people use different compression schemes, and suddenly this piece of equipment doesn't interoperate with that. The fact do all of this without the need in Spec 3 for any compression whatsoever means, once again, you will be able to pick Spec 3 products from any vendor on the market, and you will be able to buy them in the knowledge that they are simply going to work beautifully together without any interop issues. So like I say, I get very excited about this, and I need to calm down. I'll take a glass of water, excuse me.
No, it's exciting stuff. Just the amount of bandwidth now uncompressed is, you know, as a video nerd myself, that's the first thing I'm attracted to. But as we drill down on the other things it can do, it's just like, wow. Every time you say something new about it, it's like, oh, it can do that too. Oh, it can do that too. So yeah, this is super cool stuff, man. Especially we've been living with 2.0 for, oh gosh, how long?
The spec was released, actually not the spec, but the products were released in 2014, the chipset. Or 2015, we began to see the product. So yeah, Spec 2 was great, but now what happens is, as a general rule, they release an HDMI spec, and then about 4 to 5 years later, we see a real deployment of that in the market. Sure. So now we see HDBaseT bringing the solution for HDMI 2.0, and a little spoiler alert here, you know, I can tell you that but we're already thinking ahead towards, you know, support Spec 2.1 as well as HDMI 2.1. So what does Spec 3 give us? Uncompressed HDMI 2.0, and now I'm talking, of course, 4K 6444, and all of the HDR formats that Spec 2.0 and you know, the video formats that the CA861 spec brings with them, and that means HDR. That's right. HDR, of course, is HDR10, HDR10 plus, Dolby Vision. Now, the fact that we run uncompressed means that those HDR formats that require dynamic metadata, things like 10 plus and Dolby Vision, we can support them without any special requirements. Because what happens is, with Dolby Vision HDR10 plus, the metadata is embedded in the pixel data. Right. Video pixel, and when you compress, so you destroy the metadata. Now, we don't compress. So therefore, that metadata is not destroyed. So without the need for the vendors of the equipment to do any special workarounds, HDBaseT Spec 3.0 and the Valence Stello chipsets are able to extend all of those HDR formats without any problems whatsoever. We talked about 1G Ethernet tunneling. This becomes really neat when you think about it, because now we can also do things like AV over IP and HDBaseT hybrid, so where we want the best of both worlds, and we'll talk a bit more about that in a while, using that gigabit Ethernet capability. Very, very useful. Increased USB 2.0 bandwidth, audio side channels, all of the controls, and if that's not enough, up to 100 of DC power using power over HDBaseT technology. All of this over that same cable. So as you say, I get excited, you get excited. I hope that the people listening are beginning to realize that this really does change the face of professional AV, of what is going to be capable with these new HDBaseT 3 products.
You know, if you had said to me 10 years ago, 12, 15 years ago, as a young guy starting to really do installations and stuff, if you told me about this back then, I would have said, there is no way. Like, how are you even, like, that's a crazy idea, like some Tesla-like stuff, but there's no way that can ever happen. And here, you know, here we are.
Here we are. And you know, I tell people about it today, and they still say there's no way that can be done. And I still hear people say, you're doing it using compression. Guys, forget it. There is no compression involved in Spec 3 for supporting HDMI 2.0. This is unique to this technology. So what I'm going to tell you is, and we'll talk more about the new master program, the online training, is if you don't believe me, take the master course and it will all be explained to you. I don't have time for that today, but hey, if I'd have been in Florida over a beer, I could have talked the hind legs off a donkey on this stuff, because it's an amazing technology, and I, you know, I'm so proud to work for the HDBaseT Alliance, and I love talking about it. So we have a spec, and of course we need chipsets to support the specification. And here they are. There's a picture of it. This is the VS3000 brought to you by Valence, as I've said, a founder member of the HDBaseT Alliance, and of course, the inventor of the technology and the chipset vendors. And they announced already 2 years ago that the chipsets were arriving. And in fact, earlier this year, I should say, I feel part of the family, so I always say they added even more products to this range, all of them Spec 3.0. And what's great is that now, it's true also for Spec 2.0 products, the Colligo family, but for Spec 3 as well, they have subset products. Well, that means is that we have different products, different chipsets that support different capabilities. So not all of them will support, for example, USB 2.0. And that's great, because what it means is that the equipment vendors can now choose a chipset at the right price point for the use case that they need in their particular products. And the vendors can now offer a range of products which themselves are at different price points, one using the optimized chipset within it. And that's good for the installers, for the integrators, for the system designers, because now they have a range of different products that are all pick and match and plug and play, and everything will interoperate. So these products are now starting to hit the market. So once again, we have Spec 1, 8 gig, 100 megabits Ethernet, over 150 megabit per second return channel, with support for HDMI and UART and infrared. Spec 2 added more bandwidth in the return channel, 300 megabits per second, and added the USB 2.0 and those audio sideband channels that you can see here. And then we have Spec 3, which really takes us to a completely different place, with 16 gig and 2 gig in the return channel, gigabit Ethernet support. Now, another great thing that I haven't mentioned is Spec 3 supports something called port duality. Now, what does port duality mean? Spec 1 and Spec 2, you had a transmitter chip and you had a receiver chip. And if you take a simple application of an extender pair, you had a transmitter side and you had a receiver side. So as an installer, you need to make sure you had both boxes, okay?
Right.
Transmitter receiver. Now, Spec 3 has something called port duality. The same chip is used for both transmit and receive side. What does that mean is something really cool. If you're an installer now and you need to use an extender pair, you don't need to make sure you have in your toolkit 2 different types of boxes, exactly the same box used on the transmit side and the receive side. Very simple to configure which one is which. Suddenly, my life as an installer has become super, super easy. I don't need to hold 2 different products. I can just hold one. We can also, because the product is the same, so I need HDMI in on one side and HDMI out on the other. Now, in fact, I can have in the same box HDMI in and out. So I can have a local loop as well available.
Oh, yeah, that's cool.
Very, very cool. We have all of the HDCP manipulations all done inside the chip, all part of what is supported by Spec 3.0. So this is super, super powerful piece of silicon. All of it done in hardware without any real need for any software development, truly plug and play. And the good news is it doesn't matter which product you buy and install from which spec, you are fully interoperable. So I can have a Spec 3 product on one side of the link connected to a Spec 1 product on the other side of the link. It's going to work. Now,
It'll still work out.
It's still going to work out. Do not expect, if you've got Spec 3 and Spec 1, do not expect uncompressed 4K 64. Because the Spec 1 product doesn't support it, but we know to work automatically to the highest common denominator between the sides. In other words, it doesn't matter what you plug in, you will get the video. Might not be exactly the video you expected. You thought you were going to get uncompressed 4K, but you are not going to get a blank screen. It's all interoperable. And if you go to those list of compatible certified products on the hdbaset.org website, you'll see all of the different versions that like what's supported, what's not supported. The website will help you, installers, integrators, choose which is the product you need in order to achieve the implementation that you want. So super, super important, fully interoperable, not only between different vendors, but between different versions of the spec.
Danny, you mentioned not needing a TX and a RX so much anymore, but just 2 boxes that are compliant with the spec. I think you mentioned that one still needs to transmit and one still needs to receive. And I think you mentioned that that's configurable at the physical box, so maybe a dip switch or something along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely. A dip switch can do it, or maybe the vendor will decide that anyway he wants to do it in software or something. But yeah, it's configurable. It's that easy. One box You can put it at either end, and you just flip a switch, power it up, and it knows what it's meant to be doing. It's
so
super
cool.
powerful. And if you think about it, if we now look at something beyond just a simple extender pair, let's look, for example, at a plug-in card into a big switch matrix. Now, in the past, you had cards such as HDBaseT input ports and HDBaseT output ports.
Right.
Now you just have HDBaseT ports, and this gives you want 1 in 7 out, for example, for an 8-port switch. You want 4 in 4 out, whatever you want. It's possible without having to have specific hardware to do that, without having to plug in a different card that has the exact port configuration you want. So conceptually, it begins to look a little bit like kind of some flexibilities that, for example, you can do with an IP switch.
Right.
Suddenly, you have all of that here in a fully interoperable HDBaseT port with a lot of technology built in, plug and play, a truly unique value proposition.
I'll say too, just being so heavily in the video side, when you're sending those types of signals long distances, especially showing them on a really big screen, the compression really becomes apparent. Somebody's doing a dedicated theater room, for example, and the rack is on the other side of the house in the garage, and got a 150, 160 inch screen. The compression's pretty visible. It's not like looking at a 55 inch TV from 12 feet away. So the fact that we're doing this high bandwidth uncompressed, that's going to make the video files happy too.
For sure, absolutely, and let's take it, to a wider audience. Think about in a medical application where you're a radiologist, and the compression can slightly affect what you're seeing on your screen. Heaven forbid that you can make a misdiagnosis because the color's slightly off or because the resolution's slightly off. This is seriously important stuff. So the fact that we can do all of this uncompressed, we have oodles of bandwidth available and no need to compress anything. You said it for those video files. I'm saying it for a completely different use case altogether.
That's fantastic.
It's a huge benefit. It's a huge benefit. Okay, let's talk about this week now. I've got all my technology stuff out of my, I love talking about it, as you may be able to tell.
Oh yeah.
Let's talk about what's happening in Orlando this week. Thank the Lord that we have finally reached the point after 2 years, pretty much, where we are now back to face-to-face meetings. And people are going to start seeing each other in real life. And I'm so desperately disappointed that I can't be there, because I love doing these broadcasts with people like yourselves. But it's no replacement for meeting you in person.
Same.
So here we have it. HDBaseT Alliance booth 2824. Yeah. If you go to our social media, you can actually see some real pictures. I didn't have time to upgrade, like some sneak previews of what's happening. But this is kind of what it's going to look like in graphics. 27th to the 29th, so Wednesday through Friday of this week. As you can see from their logo, the largest professional AV trade show in North America. It is year after year a huge event to be at. It's going to be very interesting this year. We're on uncertain ground, uncharted territories, how it's going to be. But I'm sure that people are desperate to be there. And let's hope the show, not just for the HDBaseT Alliance, not just for Murideo, but for everybody in the AV industry, because people desperately want it. So we have a great booth with lots and lots and lots of goodies there for you. You can see this wall here, right there in the middle. This is our Spec 3 power wall. And on this wall, we already begin to see a number of the many brand new HDBaseT Spec 3 products that are out there. We have products from a large number of vendors appearing, and that's just a snapshot of what's going on in the rest of the show. You can come along and you can take a look at them. We have a touchscreen panel here where you can find out more information about all of them. So lots and lots of brand new products, because hey, the spec is available, the chipsets are available, and the equipment vendors are rushing forward to implement it. And again, don't quote me on the numbers, but we already see somewhere between 30 to 40 Pro AV manufacturers already pushing products out there. And you're going to see it all over the show floor. So super exciting for us. And I think it brings, as we've said, amazing new capabilities to the market. Now, who's going to be there in the booth with us? So we have a number of members from the HDBaseT Alliance who are sponsoring them. Here's a familiar-looking face up here, the guy from Murideo. Oh, you will be there, right, Jace? You're going to be in the booth, yes, or supporting?
Yeah. I'm grabbing the rental car tomorrow morning, heading over, going to see if I can be useful with physical labor in any of the booths and whatnot. And then, like you said, Wednesday through Friday, 9 to 5. I think 9 to 4 on Friday. I'll be over there giving demos, talking to folks, and like you said, man, just getting back in front of people is just going to be awesome.
So important. So important. Yes, so we've got you guys there. We've got a bunch of other people there from, some of them showing HDBaseT Spec 3 products, showing different use cases. Education, man, if there was ever a need for quality education and support systems for the education market, it was COVID-19, where suddenly we all found ourselves working from home, studying from home. And, there are some great solutions out there now, targeting this market. The same is true, of course, for conferencing systems, where, we needed to have good home conferencing capabilities without having to splash out, tens of thousands of dollars on a massive system. And these things are now available to us today. So you're going to see these different use cases, residential use cases, cloud. This is interesting. I didn't mention this earlier, maybe I should have done. Spec 3.0 brings the ability to connect to the cloud. So in other words, there's a company called Excite, and it really is exciting what they are doing. It enables you to reach those Spec 3 products over the cloud, enables you to manage them, enables you to monitor them, to do all sorts of control and configuration, all from the other side of the world if you need to do that.
Awesome.
That's a huge thing. So really, we bring much better capabilities to manage this without physically having to return to your installation and do it on site. So once again,
that's wild.
That's wild. So those guys are going to be there. This is another interesting topic. Hybrid installations. I touched upon it earlier. We need to see these products rolling out as well. Matrox will be in the booth, but there are other solutions from companies like, the big guys, the Crestrons and the Extrons, who understand that this is not going to be, a winner takes all. It's not just going to be HDBaseT. It's not just going to be AV over IP. And for many years, the Alliance has been saying that hybrid installations are the way to go. Inside the room, AV over IP can be very, very, very costly. You may have some latency issues, which you don't want within the room. If you want to go cross-campus, AV over IP, or to scale up to very, very large-scale installations, then AV over IP certainly has some advantages. And we begin to see these hybrid products offering the best of both worlds. Now what I will add at this point here is that moving forward, we really think that for this to be successful, for AV over IP to really take off, you need to have a truly standardized solution. There are many solutions out there, but they don't interoperate. And I think this year, where we've seen supply chain issues, in many different industries, this has really become apparent, because what's happened is people have bought these AV over IP solutions that are not standardized. And suddenly their vendor runs out of product, and now they need to buy another box, and they don't have it in stock, and they can't go to another vendor because the thing doesn't interop. So now they're locked in. And of course, with HDBaseT, of course, you don't have those problems because everything interops. But I think we would really say that probably the way forward for AV over IP would be a 1 gig solution that's been standardized. We hear about, IPMX, which is something that's new, and I think that's what Matrox will be showcasing. So definitely we believe in our hybrid installations, but we think that AV over IP really needs to get standardized. 1G is probably the way to go, because if you go to 10G, you have problems with cross switches when you want to connect between different switches, if you want to have a non-blocking application. So that's the way forward. We believe 1G standardized hybrid HDBaseT, and you're going to be able to see it in the booth already. And we have some friends from Rave, who are of course going to be our media partner.
Yes.
So for the people who unfortunately, like myself, cannot be in Orlando, there's going to be a lot of social media posts from the Rave agency, so you can keep up to speed with what's happening through them. A lot happening within the booth. The focus, of course, is on Spec 3, and we have a really cool new piece of collateral that we're going to be handing out, the Installer's Guide to an Uncompressed World. People, if you are going to be at the show, go and pick one of these bad boys up, because it's got a lot of information all about what we can do. We're going to be showing you, various different bits of kit from various different vendors who are showcasing their products within the booth. You can see here about Excite. That's why I was telling you about those guys who are going to be cloud connectivity for HDBaseT installations. So this great piece of collateral is all going to be there, and I would recommend anybody who is there to go and pick it up and to read it, and to reach out to us if you have any questions or any suggestions moving forward how you would like to work. We have the installer shop, and this is why I want to talk a little bit about HDBaseT test equipment, because It's a very simple technology to work with, but you need to know what you're doing with it, like all technologies. You know, we're talking about field terminating cables. We're talking about lots of different capabilities that the technology brings. And part of the reason that I run HDBaseT courses, as Jason, you know, you're an HDBaseT trainer as well, you do as well, you run courses to make sure that the people who are working with the technology do it right. But nonetheless, if there was a great piece of test equipment available for you, just to make sure that the cable's been terminated correctly and that the installation is working, not only at the moment that you leave the site, but also, you know, the next week and the next month and the next year, then you know, a piece of test equipment that can test all of those things and generate, if you like, a certification that, yeah, this is a good installation. That's a great thing to have. And here we have a piece of equipment that is actually being given away. It's by a company called M Solutions, the MSTest Pro tester. And Jason, I believe you are probably a bigger expert on this than I am, actually. So I'm going to take a glass of water and I'm going to let you just give some of the amazing capabilities that this thing has in it.
Yeah, so this is, you know, I always say this, you don't want your customer to be the one to find problems. So not only when you're setting up a system to make sure your infrastructure's strong and robust and things are terminated correctly, this can assist you in the setup, but also if there's any troubleshooting issues too, that this can help you as well. Danny, as you said, and you hit the nail on the head, we get a physical or electronic printout that this cable has been certified and it will work in this installation. So imagine, you know, you're a project manager and now you have a binder full of paperwork that says, you know, these 64 cables that we ran in the past 3 weeks are all going to work for you. And it's not just testing those type of cables too. We can do a lot of other cool things. We can test HDMI cables. We can read EDIDs. We can send out test patterns from the signal generator to, you know, ensure that signal's getting it through to the display. There's different modules that you can take out and put in depending on the type of testing that you're doing. So whether you're testing HDMI 1.0 or 2.0, or maybe you want to check the health of the POH, the power traveling over that cable, swap out modules, plug it in. As Danny said, it's super easy to use. Within 2, maybe 3 button presses, you can find out what you need to find out. All in a handheld, battery-powered, portable little unit. It's very, very cool stuff. The fact that it's as easy to use as it is, that's the mind-blowing thing to me. A lot of installers, they don't feel like they need to be engineers to be able to figure out some of these problems, and you don't. This is literally plug in, push a few buttons, see what's going on, boom, boom, boom. So I take this with me when I go do HDMI troubleshooting courses. I've got like a little 4-hour one for the installers. I bring this with me, and when I show them, plug in the CAT cable, plug in the HDBaseT cable, push this button, push that button. Now we get a nice green pass right there on the front, or we get a fail, and you can start troubleshooting from there. Re-terminating cables is something we always recommend, but the point of it is that you can figure out these problems and you can be assisted in your setup very easily and very quickly.
It's a great piece, and I'm honored to, you know, as well as I use it as well when I do my training. As you say, portable. It's got
easy.
So many capabilities, and what you can see on the screen there in the graphic is actually the HDBaseT chipsets have DSP hardwired into it, and that gives you can pull all this information. The tester pulls all this information really from deep inside the chipsets, and is able to tell you how much margin you have on the cable and things like that. So as I've said, it's an easy technology to work with, but if you want to make sure that your installation is good, and as you quite rightly said, you do not want your customers at the end of the day to discover the problems, then pieces of kit like this particular tester is definitely a must-have in the toolbox. You know, I think it's at a very comfortable price point. So if you don't want to buy one, you can win one, actually.
You'll win it, yeah.
You know, I actually have an older version, so I'm thinking I'm going to try and win this as well.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you should talk your name in the hat. Yeah.
I think there's a small, you know, I'm not HDBaseT Alliance members and employees are not applicable, eligible for the competition. But basically, you can go into the HDBaseT Alliance page or on LinkedIn, or if you happen to be at the show, you scan the QR code, fill in some details. And then on Friday at noon, 12 noon Orlando time, you can go back and check your LinkedIn inbox and see if you have been the extremely lucky winner of a super test equipment. And I cannot stress that enough. So folks, do try and win one of these. If you haven't got one, you really need to get one. Whether you win it or not.
I don't want to gloss over it, but we just briefly talked about it in 2 minutes, but we didn't even touch the log analyzer or the IP network analyzer. So guys, it is a powerful tool. You can do a lot more than what we've just sort of glossed over. I've actually got some training videos on the Murideo YouTube channel if you want to go check that out. I did I did one video in particular where I was in a live environment here in our own office trying to troubleshoot an HDBaseT line. So a couple of good examples if you want to see the kind of the power of it. But one thing I really love, Ariel and that team over there, they're fantastic. They're constantly adding new features, constantly making the interface easy to use. So it's all about the installer. It's all about their experience. Again, we want this stuff to be done easily and quickly without a big headache.
Absolutely, and you wondered how we managed to cram all that technology into an HDBaseT specification and into those chipsets. I wonder how they managed to cram all this functionality into this handheld box, but it is doable. So yeah, please try and win one. Come to the HDBaseT booth. Of course, it is Halloween, and there's going to be a trick-or-treat candy trail put together by a really nice bunch of people on Twitter called AV Tweeps. So you are people on site, because of course doing this virtually probably not so much fun. But you can stop by our booth 2824, grab a bag, and then go around various different members. There's a map showing the different people who are involved, and you can fill up on your candy and have some sweets and some candies for the flight home or the drive home, because we don't want you to go home hungry or with a deficiency of sugar.
I will say though that if there's some candy corn in the grab bag, whoever wants my candy corn is free to have it.
I don't know, Jason. I don't know. Anyhow, we just got a couple of minutes left. I just want to quickly talk about this fabulous new online program we have, the online HDBaseT Master Program. This is a great training course. Okay, brand new. Fabulous feedback we are getting. It's you do it in your own time. 3 different modules. We're talking about the general technical insight. We're talking about deep dive into those 5 play elements I talked to before, and we're talking about how to work with the technology in terms of interoperability, system design. A fabulous course, really amazing. It's accredited as well by Victor. It's accredited by CEDIA. You will get either RUs or CU credits, depending upon which one, or if you're following both, you'll get from both of those. So you can get all of those credits to make sure that you are kept up to date as a CTS or as a CU, a follower, if you like, or certified member of those organizations. You will get a certificate to say that you are an HDBaseT master. You will even get a free t-shirt. Not only technology, not only knowledge, but also a fancy piece of clothing to wear with pride when you go out on the streets or you go to your installs or you meet your customers. So like I say, yes, sir.
Daniel, just quickly, because I know somebody's going to ask, around how long does it take to get through the master course? Does it work at your own pace, or is it something you have to sit down and concentrate on for a few hours? Or
it's work at your own pace.
Cool.
I think if you just go through it, in full whack, it's probably no more than a couple of hours.
Cool.
But I recommend you can stop it, you can come back to it. Take your time. Understand that there's quizzes along the way and all these things to make sure you've understood it. So take your time, and at the end, like I say, all of these goodies will be on their way to you. Experts.hdbaset.org, that's the place to go. Why does my screen not want to advance? Okay, you can just go to also hdbaset.org and it's at the top of the screen. And basically, get started. And you have introductions and the different formats and how to terminate the cable. So much information all available to you. Highly recommended. Do approved HDBaseT masters, approved HDBaseT installers. It's going to make your lives a lot easier. You're going to have a lot of knowledge available to you. Can't recommend it enough. I actually did the course myself. I helped to build it, but I did it again. And there's a ton of information that's super useful there. So please go ahead and take the course.
You passed it, right? You got your shirt?
I got my shirt, and I haven't got my certificate yet. We should probably speak to somebody about that. But listen, folks, I've talked a lot. I do appreciate you being, an attentive audience. And Jason, if there's any questions, I'm all ears.
Yeah, no, it looks good so far. If anybody has any questions, Daniel, I'm happy to field those. So if you guys have any specific questions about the master course or about HDBaseT 3.0, or maybe questions on CEDIA or I'm sorry, on Infocomm and things that are going on there, feel free, just email me, jason@murideo.com. I'm happy to field any questions over to the HDBaseT team, the Valence team, the M Solutions team, anything that you guys have questions about. I'm here. My job is training and support, so please let me know.
Superstar, you're very well connected to very many people. I should probably start pushing my things to you to pass on to some of those people.
Hey, listen, man, it's a lot of fun. You know, I say this every day, but I feel very blessed, very lucky to work in this industry. I get to meet some really cool people who are thousands of times smarter than me. So I love hanging out with the HDBaseT team. I feel like I know this is very cliche, but I feel like I get smarter just being in the same room as you guys. And you know, I'm honored to be part of the HDBaseT group and being part of the training program, being able to hang out at the booth with you guys. I'm really excited for it, to give some people some live hand-on demos. It's very easy to talk about this stuff, but as you know, when you get to plug things in and push some buttons, that's really where the magic happens. So very much looking forward to seeing everybody. And Danny, one more time, the booth was 2484, right?
2824.
2824. Okay, very good.
You need to know that, otherwise you're not going to find your way there. Okay?
I'll end up over there by the pretzel booth looking for all the HDBaseT folks. Yeah.
2824, if I'm not mistaken. Now you've got me nervous. So, Jason, have a great show. And again, thanks so much for having me on today. Love talking to you, man. And have a fabulous time in Orlando. Have a
Absolutely. Sorry you couldn't be there, but I'm sure we'll see you next time. Okay.
Definitely.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.